Hey guys, welcome back to another one of my videos. So there are a few things in my life that I can say are my favorites. Like when people ask me like, oh, what's your favorite type of food? Or who's your favorite band? Are you a dog or a cat person? I just freeze, honestly. Maybe it's this fear of being tied to like one thing. But if someone were to ask me what my favorite anime movie was, I have to say confidently Akira. I remember the very first time I saw Akira, it was on VHS on this tiny little TV set. The screen was probably no more than like, it was definitely less than a foot. And it had a VCR player, like it was like a TV slash VCR combo set. I am definitely dating myself here, but it was late at night. I was in high school. I had turned the volume down really low so as to not wake my parents. So my face was about like 5 inches from this tiny little TV screen. But as soon as it started, it shows these images of Neo Tokyo, which is where slash when this movie takes place, and I knew that I was in for something very different. After about an hour of watching it, because I think it runs for around 2 hours, I had to turn it off because it was just really eerie and super intense. It was around 2 a.m. and I tend to get easily freaked out in the middle of the night like that. Like everything's just really quiet and I just feel extra alone. So yeah, I turned it off. So yeah, I'm kind of a wuss. It wasn't until a few days later that I actually ended up finishing it. And I was so mind blown and honestly super disturbed by what I had just watched. I just never saw anything like it. And this was actually after I had seen Ninja Scroll. So it wasn't like I wasn't used to super violent or gory or more adult anime. If you've seen the movie, you probably understand where I'm coming from. And you probably had the same experience as I did and most likely did not wuss out like I did, and I commend you for that. But as you may have figured out, I tend to like to create or recreate characters that are like quote unquote ugly. So if they look somewhat unnatural or demonic or fleshy, I'm all for it. So it probably doesn't come as a surprise that I had wanted to do Tetsuo in his mutated big blobby form. Just a bit of background information about Tetsuo. He's one of the characters who has like a rather unfortunate collision with this psychic slash paranormal child. They refer to these children as espers. Some of these psychic powers then get transferred to Tetsuo, and unfortunately he is not able to handle or harness this power. And it then makes him mutate into whatever you'd call this. I've read the first volume of the manga. Right, so Akira is actually a manga series that the movie was based on. I have yet to finish the series. But I do believe that Tetsuo looks very different in the manga compared to the movie, so I'm officially saying that this is the movie version of him. Enough said, let's get started, and don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell. All right, here we go. Butting in now while I'm editing because I realized the clip I had recorded was really shaky. But I just want to say this next part, I'm starting to sketch Tetsuo out. I actually had to pick a couple of different like screenshots, and I'll plug some of them around here. And try to pick and choose what I liked from each scene because he is like this amorphous blob that keeps changing. There is no singular shape that he has. So I thought it'd be a good idea to just pick and choose what my favorites were and then combine them all into one single sculpture. So because there are so many different sections and it's easier to tell what each section looks like according to the color it's associated with, I'm gonna go in with these really crappy bootleg microns. They're called micro lines, and go in with that so that I can follow the guide a lot easier. Okay, I just finished up like the reference guide slash template, color blocked it out so I know how much of each color I'll need approximately and how everything will just be mapped out. This is the front. Obviously you can see his face, his left hand with his girlfriend that he's about to squeeze to death. I kind of messed up her arm, so ignore that. And then if you go down, you can see Kaneda is also being sucked into his body. His right hand that has mutated into like a gooey shape. The gray lines are the electrical cords. And then this is the back side. So this is the back side of his head, right? It has like that same head shape, obviously. This is that hand that's holding onto his girlfriend. Main features are his weird, like, I guess that would be his right leg and his foot with weird toes. That evil sergeant officer guy who's being eaten by this second mouth. I'm not actually sure if that's his main mouth. I'm just calling it his second mouth, aka rear cavity, because that just seems more exciting and fun. And then this third eye, which again, I'm not sure if that's supposed to be his real eye, but I just thought I'd add it just for kicks. I mean, really, he's just harnessing so much energy that he can't control that his body is mutating into this like monstrous thing. So I don't know if I have to be exactly accurate in terms of what makes sense biologically, right? And I went in and kind of showed, like, this is like a little, what do you call it? Like an index? Like a color index? Hold on.
A few moments later.
Yes, the color index. So I quickly jotted down like what each color refers to what part on the body. Again, this is the back side. And also lets me know like what colors I need to get or what combination of colors I need to get. So these are the main ones that will stick out the most. And then down here I scribbled what other tiny little extra colors I need to use. Like I need actual black for some of the character hair for Tetsuo's girlfriend, Kaneda. I also need white for these teeth. So there's all of these little bits, and it's gonna be kind of crazy. I have a lot of scraps to use, so hopefully I get to use those up a lot, but I know I'll be doing a lot of color mixing. All right, here we go. I'm beginning to make my modeling chocolate colors. Same process as usual. I had to go to Michael's and pick up some extra pinks, purple, and red, because I feel like that's the majority of what Tetsuo is made of. Here's my corn syrup, and I'm also making some of this peanut butter candy melt modeling chocolate. This is what I used for my lich, the last video that I had posted. If you haven't seen that, check it out. It was super delicious, and I thought it would be good to have kind of a muddier color because as vibrant as he is, he has like different weird shades of flesh, and so I thought it would be good to incorporate quote-unquote uglier colors to the mix. You like my Cars themed Ziploc baggie? So I just prepared a batch of pink. Once this cools down just a little bit more, I'll put it onto aluminum foil and wrap it up, and then keep making all the other colors.
An eternity later.
Okay, and then all the colors are done, or at least the colors I had to make. It kind of looks a little like Eastery, but of course it's going to hopefully turn into something more monstrous. But yeah, colors are all done. Now I have to go and make the Rice Krispie treat material and start molding. I have my Rice Krispie treat material made. I might need to make more, but we'll just start with this. And then this is the Armature. It's not really much, honestly. I just stretched the coiled last bit of what I had. And I didn't think I needed to do anything crazier than this because he's really just like a mass, like a giant blob. So there isn't much like actual armature or like proportions that I need to work off of. I'm just gonna pretty much build off of just one piece of wire. It definitely looks kind of funny, but this is where you don't think too hard about what it looks like, or else you'll just have a bunch of intrusive thoughts that the whole project is a failure. This giant tray of aluminum foil is actually the modeling chocolate I had set aside for cooling. They come out kind of like big old flat bricks that I then kind of knead into balls so that they're easier to work with, that's what she said. And they do have this kind of greasy, fatty residue that kind of pulls around the top. I don't know if you can see that, but I do like to go in and kind of scrape it off with a tool just so I have cleaner material to work with. All the colors are now done. This is just looking extra wrinkly because I reheated in the microwave for too long. It kind of makes the oils separate a little bit, but once it cools down and I start working with it, it'll be just the same consistency as the other colors. So we have those, but then we also have a bunch of leftover scraps from previous projects. I mentioned before that modeling chocolate stores really well for I think up to 2 years. I might be wrong. I just know it's a really long time. But yeah, we have a bunch of scraps that I could definitely use for this guy. So the colors are done. I still might need to do a little bit more mixing, but we'll just work on it as we go. I am presenting this modeling chocolate to you as if I was trying to sell my wares, but I wanted to show you what it takes to make the skin tone that I'll be mostly working with. So that pink you see there is just the exact same pink that I bought straight out of the bag. Obviously it's too vibrant to be skin tone, so I thought I'd add in some white as well as a little bit of orange I already had on hand to kind of make it a more realistic color than straight up like piglet pink. And you can see how much of a difference it is, right? My camera has really bad lighting right now. But yeah, it turned out great. And now I'm gonna go back and start to knead additional colors. So they don't sell like a variety of shades at Michael's or Amazon. So I have to do a lot of mixing to attain the colors that I want. And I always find this step is so worth it. It really makes it look like it has way more quality than if I just stuck with the colors straight from the bag. It also works very much like paint, and by that I mean it's easy to mix together. They blend really well. Considering it's just sugar and food dye, it really works out. And here are all the colors I have finished. This one's a little bit too dark, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, most of my set is done, and I can start laying down a very thin layer all over the Rice Krispie shape I had made previously. This is kind of a long process, and it's also kind of a step that I always talk about where I'm always a little nervous that it looks kind of wonky, and this is definitely the case with my Tetsuo sculpture, but you just have to keep soldiering on. I say that all the time, I'm so sorry if that's annoying to hear. But yeah, I really do like to start off with a clean base, and I blocked out the colors on my base by following the diagram I had made earlier. So it might look insane and not look like much of anything at this point, but it's all part of the game plan. So this is the next day compared to what I just showed you. I covered most of it. I have some other colors that are gonna go in these blank spots. I'll definitely be able to do that in like the next 10-ish minutes, and then I'm gonna go ahead and start actually sculpting it out. Like with most projects, I usually start with the head or face, and as I was sculpting or like setting his eyes into the sculpture, I started to get really nervous because I thought he really looked like Stewie, and that is not the vibe I am going for. But I kept building. I think the whole idea of sculpting, what makes it great is that you can take away, but you can also keep building. If things don't look necessarily how you'd like, there's always opportunity to tweak here and there and just make it even more than what you originally had intended to. I also started adding additional colors besides the basic skin tone I had made. He has a lot of this like more fleshier colored goo that he works with in this scene, and I wanted to make sure to use a lot of that. It still reads as flesh, but it's definitely not skin. Now I'm working on his right hand. It's a pretty defined hand. Like if you've never seen the movie and you see this image, you're pretty certain it's a hand because there's just so many fingers growing out of it. It's also the hand that is grasping onto his girlfriend, Kaori. I spent a lot of time on it because I knew that it was such an impactful part of the whole sculpture, so I wanted to make sure I got it right. After I got that down, I started adding in the other skin tones or flesh tones that he has. And in the movie, he has a lot of purples going on, a lot of lavenders, a lot of dark purples. All his veins are purple. So I wanted to make sure to get a lot of those shades in. This is that vomit that he has. It's kind of like a faded pea green, and then after that I'm adding on some tentacles with that very dark shade I had made. This is supposed to be purple, but I ended up accidentally using way too much food dye, and it came out much darker than I intended. And so I just got rid of it and tried not to think about how long it took to individually sculpt and lay all those tentacles down. But I'm very much at a point where I don't just look at something and say, hey, that's good enough. I really want to go back and make it exactly like how I would like it. I won't say that I'm 100% there, but I'm a lot better about it and a lot more patient about it than when I had first started making these cakes/sculptures. That's not to say I didn't use the dark purple. I actually used it for his like kidney/liver, whatever this is supposed to be, part of his body. I still like the color. I just didn't think it looked good necessarily as tentacles. If anything, this is kind of gross to say, but they kind of reminded me of pube.
Okay.
So I still wanted to use it, but reincorporate it as a different shape. And it doesn't look like it, but here is his right hand. This is the hand that looks a bit more melted than his right hand. That's the one that's grasping onto Kaori. It was actually one of my favorite little screenshots I took of this mutation scene, and I wanted to make sure I got it right. I just really like how he has obviously like these sausage looking fingers, right? But at the tips of these fingers are even tinier fingers. Like, how genius of a design is that, especially for when this manga was made and when this movie came out. When it comes to fleshy art I want to do, this just really encapsulates everything I love about it. I took a break and decided to make a lot more white modeling chocolate. I didn't have a lot of scraps of it to begin with, and also I realized I needed it to make more skin tone and also to make a better shade of purple for his tentacles, instead of that really dark shade that I had mentioned looked like pubes.
Okay.
So here's that dark shade. And now here is a lighter one. So it's not like a complete lavender, but it's a lot lighter, right? I think it looks a lot better. A long, slow process of adding tentacles again, cutting back to when it looked too dark and cutting back to now. It's such a big improvement, and I'm so glad that I decided to get rid of that part and redo it. It really pays off. Now I'm doing his back, and I'm mostly working on his spine at this point. In the movie there is a glimpse of it, and it really does look like just the backbone of some kind of alien, and so I wanted to incorporate it. I do have a slight regret that I didn't make it a more dynamic shape, because it kind of looks like it's moving straight down, but I love sculpting a good spinal cord. It always reminds me of a xenomorph. Anything Giger brings me joy. Just had to point out the caramel candy apple lollipops I had bought before I start on my next section. Who else remembers these? These are still just as good as I remember, if not better. There's way more caramel coverage on the lollipops than there was when I used to be a lot younger. Making another set of tentacles for his back, the same exact shade or new shade that I used on his front. I decided to just roll a bunch of little rat turd shapes so that I wouldn't go crazy with how long and how tedious the whole process is. I tend to stick my tongue out a lot, and this is when I realized that I should probably stop doing that. Adding more flesh tones, trying to break up that spinal cord that I felt was just a little too straight. Now this part on the back I'm working on, it's like this tiny mouth that is trying to eat up Colonel Shikishima, and I wasn't sure if it was Tetsuo's actual mouth or just like this weird deformation. So I kind of put it where I would think his butt would kind of be, so it's kind of like this mouth butt, and that's probably really gross. But I just thought it was fitting. It's a gross scene. He also has all these gross little skin tags. Also another eye. I don't believe it's his regular eye, but it's very eerie and I wanted to make sure to include it. Looking back, this was a big regret because I realized in the scene when you see this eye, it's very like bloody looking and just really messed up, and I wish I could have gone back and given it more of that effect. Now, this next set of steps was the part that stressed me out the most, just thinking about it, because I had to make very, very tiny anime figurines. So this is supposed to be Kaori, his girlfriend that he's squeezing in his hand. I also wanted to make Kaneda and Colonel Shikishima. The reason why I was so nervous is, well, one, they're extremely tiny little figurines, and also two, the last time I had made human anime characters was in my faux Kiki delivery service cake I had made as a commission, and that was really tough, and it was a nightmare of a time, to be honest, and I just wanted to make sure that I didn't have to relive that whole ordeal again. But I have to say it was a lot less stressful, maybe because I didn't have to think about someone's expectations of it. This was just for me. I wasn't too worried about extra tiny details because really you're looking at Tetsuo as a whole, some of his parts. If you can't really see the pupils of Kaneda's eyes, that's fine. You just need to get the idea that this monster is absorbing some of the people that he loves and some of his enemies. So all those are done. Now I just started to coast after I made his little foot that pops out of his body and worked on his veins, which was a very light lavender color. The very last parts of sculpting were these cables. I was also strangely nervous about this part, maybe because he's such an organic shape, and to have something that was more electrical kind of threw me off in terms of what I expected, but it was really easy. You just have to roll out gray modeling chocolate, and because it looks so different compared to the rest of his body, it really gives off a pretty good effect in my opinion. I kind of just randomly threw them on wherever I thought it looked best. Then the very, very last step was shading him in. As usual, I'm using food dye, and this was kind of an awkward step because it is anime. There isn't a lot of like natural looking shading going on because it is a cartoon. Usually shading is more blocked than organic looking. So I just went in and I would paint a little bit and then use a dry paintbrush to wipe most of it off, just so it wasn't too obvious. But this is how he came out. Okay, so that was my Tetsuo edible chocolate sculpture from the movie and manga AKIRA. I hope you enjoyed watching it. I had a blast making it. I feel like this is the first of many versions I want to make specifically of Tetsuo. I realized that there was just so much more you could do with him. I mean, as I had mentioned previously, he's a constantly changing shape in this scene, and it's just one of my favorite movies of all time. and I feel like I would never get tired of making him. It's just textural heaven when it comes to sculpting. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell, and I will see you all next time. Bye.